everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to update you on my tube story. If you haven't been following, I had an NJ tube for 16 weeks and I had GJ tube surgery in June. An NJ nasal tube, NJ or NG, is usually used for non-permanent situations, and then you have surgery if you need to for a permanent tube, either a G tube, a J tube, or a GJ tube. A G tube goes directly into the stomach, a J tube goes into your small intestines, and a GJ tube goes into your stomach with a tube that also goes into your small intestines. So you can drain stomach acid or any stomach content out of the G port and feed into the J port. Back in June, I think it was either the 6th or the 7th, I had my GJ tube surgery in interventional radiology. I had to show up pretty early in the morning and they discussed the procedure with me, hooked up an IV. I was supposed to get a PEG J, or a PEG GJ, which is where the tube hangs out of you, and then in a month or so come back and get a button, which is more of a non-noticeable tube. But I actually ended up, once they got in there and everything, just to be able to get a button right away, which was very awesome because I was definitely tired of having a very noticeable tube. I honestly wasn't really too nervous about the surgery. They did put me to sleep and they, I think it's called intubated, where they put the tube down your throat while you're down there, or while you're under, and then they cut me open to make the stoma, which is the hole, and then they guided the tube in there with wires and with a x-ray type machine. And I woke up a little bit later in a lot of pain. The first pain meds they used didn't work at all, and then the second pain meds they used I had a reaction to. I got a rash, but I was in so much pain that they wanted to make sure that it was in the right place and that it hadn't shifted since surgery. So they got that checked and then finally got me on pain meds that actually worked. I ended up staying overnight so they could monitor me and make sure nothing was going wrong because I was in so much pain. And then the next day I went home and then began my 1 month of recovery because it took that long for the pain to go away and my stoma to heal. So this is my tube and a tubey pad. So this is the G port. I have a Mickey button. There's also AMT buttons. This is the J port and this is the balloon. The balloon is inflated with water to keep your tube from falling out. The G port I plug in to a drain bag or a syringe, or I have this drain tube that I connect to it, which goes in like this, and then I can drain into a cup or whatever. As you can see, some stuff is already starting to drain out. I'm just gonna leave it connected since I forgot to clip it before I plugged it in so stuff wouldn't drain out. This is my feed attachment that goes into here, which has formula in it right now. It's normally clear, and it goes like that, and I hook it up to my feed pump, which you can see in an earlier video because I used the same feed pump and formula that I did when I had my nasal tube. Tubey pads are used to soak up anything that comes out of your stoma because stomach acid does tend to come out of your stoma. Some people drench gauze, some people only have a little bit or barely any. Your feed supply company should supply you with a lot of gauze if you prefer to use gauze instead of tubey pads. I have this one from I think it's Tubby Whoopies, and it's a cookie, and it says tough, so tough cookie. But I also have these kind that are a little bit more practical and not in a fun shape. And then I use Destin cream to put around my stoma. Yes, it's butt cream or rash cream, but I put it around to protect my skin from the acid that comes out, because it can damage your skin. If you want to use gauze instead, there are multiple different types of tape. My supply company provides just regular surgical tape, but I have a few different kinds that I use to clean my stoma, because you have to keep it very clean. I have Q-tips, and I use just regular soap, and I clean around it and get all the gunk off and dry it off very well. Right now I am dealing with some granulation tissue, which is tissue that forms to try to close the hole that has been formed. So the tube goes from the outside of me through my abdominal wall into my stomach. That's the J portion, and then the G portion, and then the J portion also goes into my stomach, but is threaded down into my small intestines so I can feed into it. It has now been about 3 months since my surgery, and I'm doing very well. The first month was very rough. I could barely sit up by myself. I had to have a lot of help, and I couldn't really lay down. I had to sleep sitting up because the pain was so bad. I had to have help getting up off the toilet for about the first week and a half or so, and had to sit down to take any showers. What else? But the pain did eventually get better. I did have to slowly go off of the pain meds, and I did end up having pain med withdrawal, which was very scary and not a fun process. What else? Earlier this month, my balloon actually ended up rupturing, and I had to have a tube change, which I just went into interventional radiology, and they just swapped it out. They were gonna see if they could fix it in any way, because they weren't sure if it had completely ruptured or if it just needed it deflated and needed some water. So they went in there. They didn't do full sedation this time, since they weren't doing any cutting. I just did awake sedation, and they realized that it had fully ruptured, so they just pulled it out and put in a new one. It was they numbed the area around here, so I didn't feel much. I'm gonna take my 2B pad off and I can show you. When I first got it, I had sutures here, here, and here that kept it attached to the abdominal wall until the tract formed. After 10 days, I could take it off. And then, as you can see, that little bit of tissue right there is granulation tissue. I had a ton. The rest I actually burned off with balloon powder. And then, as you can see, yes, I can move it in and out, and it does move in and out on its own. And actually, air and acid sometimes comes through the hole and makes like a farting sound, which is actually kind of hilarious. But it does dangle some, and it can move around. This is really heavy, so it does kind of make it dangle some and twist. But a lot of times when there is anything in my stomach or in my intestines and it's trying to digest, it will move the tubes with it. So as right down here it's starting to digest my formula, it'll move it in and out like this and make it pop, which sometimes can be painful and sometimes can make me nauseous, but most of the time it doesn't. It's just an odd, uncomfortable feel of it like popping, so it kind of feels like a little kick. I keep telling my mom, I'm like, Oh, it's like I'm pregnant and feeling the kicks without actually having a baby. Yay. But I think that's about it. I clean it 2 to 3 times a day and change out my tubie pads. For granulation tissue, I have had it burnt off with silver nitrate, which didn't really do much. I have tried granulation, which I had a reaction to, and now I'm trying the alum powder. I have switched to overnight feeds. That's why I'm not hooked up right now, thankfully. I was so tired of having to carry my backpack around and go to work with my backpack. I think that's about it for my surgery and tube update. I do drain out about 200 to 300 milliliters of stomach acid per day, sometimes more, sometimes less. I think that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. I am still working on getting up my awareness videos. I do realize that August is almost over. I've had a pretty crappy month with my granulation tissue and with a sinus infection, but I am still working on them. Thanks for your patience, and I hope you enjoy my story.